if a for-profit happens to fall in our lap, because some for-profit companies like the idea of working with a marketing agency that's transparent, that has good values, and is giving back to the community. Good corporate social responsibility foundation. It's kind of what we're centered around. You wouldn't believe how many nonprofits like to work with, that type of an agency. So we do take them, and of course they have to be mission driven themselves. They can't just be out for profit. We're not that kind of marketing company. And they subsidize a little bit. They do have bigger budgets, and they help subsidize some of the work we have with nonprofits. Now, some nonprofits we work with, they do have good budgets. They have big budgets, and that's great. And there's other nonprofits that we work with that have very tiny budgets. We can do a lot in an hour. What most freelancers or the in-house marketing teams would take 5 hours or 10 hours. We actually operate on that factor of 5 or factor of 10.
Welcome to the Impact Multiplier CEO podcast. I'm Richard Metcalf, founder of X Quadrant, and my mission is to help the world's top CEOs and entrepreneurs shift from incremental to exponential progress and create a huge positive impact on our world. Now, that requires you to reinvent yourself and transform your business. So, if you're ready to play a bigger game than ever before, I invite you to join us and become an Impact Multiplier CEO. Paul Feith is founder and CEO of Paul Gregory Media, a digital marketing agency. What I wanted to talk to him about today was how his mission emerged organically over time. He didn't set his business up to be a B corporation. He didn't have purpose embedded at the start, but it emerged, and it was a commitment that he wanted to make. So we look at how he did that, and also how he addresses really practical issues. Paul's business mainly serves non-profits, so budgets can be tight. But he's come up with creative solutions to real key issues such as employee attraction and retention. And it's really interesting to see how he does that and how he embeds the culture of giving back into his business. Now, one of the things about giving back is it can be easy, as people say, to be generous with other people's money. But as the owner of this small business, every initiative he takes, giving his employees time away to other worthy causes, giving money away, it comes directly out of his own personal bottom line, if you want. So we talk about the mindset that he had to have in order to make that giving back culture a reality. So this is a great lesson for all of us listening to this conversation with Paul Feith. Hi, Paul, and welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me. Good to be here.
So what I know about you, Paul, is that you're the founder, the CEO of Paul Gregory Media, digital marketing agency. You work with nonprofits to help them spread their message. As you put it, you help people to help people who help people. Say that again. You help people who help people, right? So looking at a second order impact.
Yes, with that entity behind the green curtain.
Yeah, there we go. Yeah, exactly. So you're the power behind the throne. And I guess what I'm curious about is how did that mission emerge? Because you said that when you started the company, that wasn't the original aim, or at least you didn't have that necessarily the same sense of purpose as you do now. It's something which has emerged along the way. So as this season is business as a force for good, I'd love to explore with you a little bit about how you realized that you had the potential to be a force for good in this business.
Yeah, well, I started out as a graphic designer, so employee of one, or a company of one. And it took quite a number of years. I started in 2006, back in 2013, which is, another 7 years later, hired my first employee. And then in 2011, just before that, I joined a board of directors for the first time. It was my first volunteer experience, believe it or not. I was in my 40s, so kind of late in life volunteering. And I just caught the bug. I loved governance. I loved, fundraising, and I loved volunteer recruitment. And I just got the bug. And next thing I knew, I joined another board and another, and realized that I loved helping people. I loved rallying around a mission. And so I decided to put that kind of edict and culture into the business. And before I knew it, within a few years, people started seeking us out as candidates for employment because they liked the idea of doing purpose-driven marketing, I guess.
Has that worked for you? Because I think there can be a flip side. If other people I've spoken to have said, sometimes there can be a dark side to that, because this becomes so attractive to people, perhaps, that people who might be applying who aren't actually a fit. So I'm just kind of wondering how you found that, or actually whether it's all been positive for you in that, in sense of
Well, yeah, that's a good point. You do have to start with, skills, soft skills, talent. And so the interview process doesn't change. It's just the cherry on top, I think, when they said, we really love working. And at first I probably thought it was like just, an interview thing where they're just sugarcoating and propping you up and blowing some, what do they call it? Blowing sunshine up your skirt or whatever. And, scoring some points to get the job. But it really, after a few years, I can detect, who's just saying it to say it, because you could look at their LinkedIn profile or their resume and you could see if they've done volunteer work in the past or if they've worked for nonprofits in the past. And when those things, converge and you see that they truly are looking to do some purpose-driven or mission-driven marketing, it ends up being a good fit, because you can't work at Paul Gregory Media and not believe in a mission or volunteering in your community or giving back or sustainability or good governance or any of the tenets that we have in our organization. It would just rub you the wrong way, I would think.
Yeah, really fascinating. So this mission started to emerge as you went on your own journey of serving in different places. And so now you focus, I think, pretty much exclusively on nonprofit organizations. Now, these don't necessarily have the same budgets potentially as other corporate clients you might be pursuing. So how have you had to kind of structure the business perhaps differently from what you might have done otherwise to deliver on that mission and keep the lights on and so forth?
That's a great question. While we do focus our marketing efforts on nonprofits, if a for-profit happens to fall in our lap, because some for-profit companies like the idea of working with a marketing agency that's transparent, that has good values, and is giving back to the community. Good corporate social responsibility foundation. It's kind of what we're centered around. You wouldn't believe how many nonprofits like to work with, that type of an agency. So we do take them, and of course they have to be mission driven themselves. They can't just be out for profit. We're not that kind of marketing company. And they subsidize a little bit. They do have bigger budgets and they help subsidize some of the work we have with nonprofits. Now, some nonprofits we work with, they do have good budgets. They have big budgets, and that's great. And there's other nonprofits that we work with that have very tiny budgets. We can do a lot in an hour. What most freelancers or the in-house marketing teams would take 5 hours or 10 hours. We actually operate on that factor of 5 or factor of 10. So when they say, well, we don't know if we can afford an agency, well, 1 hour of what we can do in an hour would surprise you. And all of a sudden it does become affordable.
So how do you do that? So do you have a huge ChatGPT algorithm in the background?
Yes. That's what actually is behind the green curtain. No. Well, though we are using it for some interesting starting points, but when it comes down to hiring the right people and doing the same things over and over and over a day. I mean, from a content strategy and a critical thinking standpoint, it's different every hour, different every day. But when you're doing social media and that's your job, or you're doing artwork and design, or and you have 15 years of experience or 10 years of experience, we're hiring really good people that, well, let's just take design. What they can do in an hour, they can design a flyer and 3 social media posts and save the date postcard, whereas it might take somebody else to 5 hours. Or they're thinking about what are they going to say? What's the messaging going to be? How does it fit into our overall strategy before they even hit pen to paper?
Yeah, that's really interesting, isn't it? Because I think speed to deliver is so important, because it has so many benefits, right? You have more reps, you go up your learning curve faster. Actually, you get more iterations. That just in general, I think it's I've learned that in my own career, that actually when you know what you're up to, just optimizing, actually getting really good at delivering stuff fast is important.
Yeah. Well, there's a saying, right? You could have it fast, you could have it cheap, or you could have it good. You can only pick 2. And I think that holds true. We're really good and we're really fast, but it's not going to be cheap. But at the same point, what we can do in that hour, and our blended rate is actually a lot lower than most agencies, because nonprofits can only afford so much. But it may seem expensive for that nonprofit agent or organization, but what we actually deliver, they realize there's a lot of value there.
Okay, so we're going back to this question about how you kind of balance that. So there's a client portfolio component here, right? How about people? So we're talking about bringing people on board. How do you kind of retain them, keep them? Is the mission enough basically to kind of like is that really like all you need to do is basically have a compelling mission and then you're done, or do you find you have to work?
Well, naively, I used to think so, right? But no. Like any business, there's a certain attrition rate. Actually, in marketing, and most agencies can tell you this, the attrition rate's kind of high in digital marketing. And I don't know why that is, but I think maybe because there's a lot of marketing jobs and opportunities out there. So 2 years is what I found in the past 17 years that I've been doing this. 2 years is about the average somebody will stay. So we had to do something and not only attract the talent, but how do we keep them? And we could pay them more, certainly, but there's a ceiling to that, right? Because again, we're working for nonprofits, and there's only so much coming in, so there can only be so much going out. But that's one way. The other way is through perks and benefits. So we did 100% remote workforce. That's one, right? You get to work from home. Two is we piloted a 4-day work week. We read some article from Norway somewhere that said this is really successful. We thought, hey, let's just work on a work-life balance. And so we did a 4-day work week, every Friday off. And it's only a 32-hour work week. We're not trying to pack 40 hours into 4 days. But Richard, think about this for a second. You get every Friday off. So in a year, you already get 52 days off. Now you add the 8 holidays on top of that, you get 60 days off. And we require a mandatory 2 weeks because that's our third perk is we get unlimited PTO. Within reason. As long as your work is done, you get PTO. We measure performance based on work delivered on time, not how much work you're doing. So you have to take at least on your unlimited paid time off, you have to take at least 2 weeks, which is 8 more days. So you're coming out of the gate when you're first hired, you get 68 days off a year, which is pretty incredible.
Yeah, it's a differentiator, right? Yeah, definitely.
Right. So now if you leave our organization to work for somebody else and you're using us as a stepping stone, which, there's nothing wrong with that. A lot more people are doing it these days. And it just lowers our attrition rate because now when they go to another company, are they going to be able to work remotely? Are they going to be able to do a 32-hour work week and have Fridays off? Are they going to have unlimited PTO, or do they have 2 weeks and they got to figure out when they're going to take that off, as opposed to a minimum of 68 days off a year? And that's just a way we can, and it's not perfect, right? People will leave and they'll find other opportunities. They'll give all that up, just as a, way to grow and, whatever. But to lower our attrition rate, that's what we've done.
Interesting. It reminds me of a conversation I was having with my son just the other day, who was calculating that if we took the really long summer holidays that we get here, which is over 2 months for school, and spread them out across the year, he could have an extra day off a week and have 3-day weekends. And he was strategizing on a different way of organizing his school life. So,
oh, wow. So is it working out the hours and how we could save a day here or a day? Nice. That's motivated.
Yeah, well, basically it's like, well, we'd rather do 2 months off in one block. I'd love it to have, only work, have every Wednesday off. So I'd have 2 days on, 1 day off. He was kind of strategizing and doing the counting. So anyway, I digress. But I think this point of working on the employee experience, in those really tangible ways, without it being a secret for just saying, all your work's still the same, all your hours are basically the same, but you can kind of take off time, which at the end of the day, the pressure is still there. But it sounds what you've done is you have rebalanced it as well.
I didn't want to create more pressure for them by saying, oh, we got to get our work done so we can take Friday off. But it did, think of it this way. If we didn't have Fridays off, sometimes you have to work the weekends. Sometimes you have to go to an event or you have a website launch or whatever. So Friday was no different. Every once in a while, we had to put in an hour or two on a Friday just because there was something going on. So we treated it just like a weekend. Takes the pressure off.
Yeah, makes sense. Well, I've been doing a lot of thinking myself about, the 80-20 principle as it applies to time. And when you do that, then obviously you suddenly realize, well, that bottom 20%.
Yeah, 80-20 rule. Absolutely.
Probably doesn't really matter, right? Probably doesn't make an impact. Probably doesn't make an impact. Yeah. So Paul, so tell me what's next for your business. So how do you want to multiply your impact as a company?
Well, I mean, like all the nonprofits that come to us and say, we're the best kept secret and we want to, increase our capacity so that we serve more people. We're no different. We're a for-profit company, but we want to increase our awareness so that we could help more nonprofits. We're so good at what we do. I remember this saying, it's like, don't do what you like in life as far as a profession, because you may not be good at it. So do what you're good at, and you may end up liking it. And I'm certainly in the latter portion of that. I never, I mean, I guess while I liked graphic design, that's nowhere near what I'm doing now. It's not my role, but we're good at it and we have really good people doing it. So we can help so many more nonprofit companies out there with their marketing. And so they're not the best kept secret anymore. So our goal and our growth and our mission is to just help more and also give back to our community. We have a couple of things going on where we give 1%. We're committed to giving 1% of gross revenue, not net revenue, but gross revenue, back to our community nonprofit organizations in the form of a cash donation. And then we give 15% of our time as well, which is a huge chunk. In 2020, when the pandemic hit, we gave 50% of our time donated in kind. And then, and now we've kind of settled in and we're now 15% of all of our time and work that we do is donated in kind. So it kind of keeps our feet rooted to the ground and in our community.
So Paul, tell me about that. Tell me about your decision process, because you're the owner of this company. That's probably, that comes out of your whatever, your income, your dividend for the year, your pension pot, whatever it is.
It does come out of me, yeah.
So that was, that's on you, right? I mean, you're taking that, you're taking that hit, if you like, if it is a hit, right? But
well, sure, because the employees get paid regardless. But yeah.
I hope you're enjoying this conversation. This is just a quick interlude to remind you that my book, Making Time for Strategy, is now available. If you want to be less busy and more successful, I highly recommend that you check it out. Why not head over to makingtimeforstrategy.com to find out the details. Now, back to the conversation. What process did you have to do, if any, to kind of mentally go, that's what we're going to do? Because you're kind of signing up for a big deal there. You're 1% of revenue. It's definitely more, it's probably a lot more in terms of profit, the time that you could be directing towards other initiatives. What was just really curious, because it's a great mindset. Well, I want to just dig into what happened.
Well, kudos to you for asking, because nobody's ever asked me that before. So very, very insightful question. 2020 is what did it. 2020, people didn't know, and organizations didn't know if they were going to get funded, if they're going to get donors. It was just a scary time, especially around May and June. So they stopped a lot of their marketing contracts with us and a lot of their retainers. They just said, hey, we're just going to pause this. We don't know what's going on and we don't know when it's going to end. It was just a big time of uncertainty. But there was still a lot of work to be done. So we said, you know what? Just for the next couple of weeks or for the next month, we're going to keep doing some things for you. And that's where we donated 50% of our time in 2020. In 2021, I think it was like 35, and it kind of settled down to 15 after 3 years. So that's where the idea came from. We basically needed to keep busy. I was paying salaries regardless, and having only half the work or a third of the work that we formerly had, and now we're twiddling our thumbs. It made sense to at least keep people busy. Again, the salaries came out of my pocket, and there was not enough revenue to cut it or cover it in some cases. So, we had to borrow from credit and whatnot to make that work. But we did get a lot of recognition and thanks and appreciation from clients, and it was local chambers of commerce and Rotaries and philanthropic organizations recognized us for the work we did those years, and that gave us some recognition to bring on new clients. So I think sometimes just doing good can mean good business. I mean, that should be one takeaway from this, right? Doing good means good business.
Yeah, I'm sure those clients where you stood by them in their difficult time, they probably became super loyal, referred you, and lots of other good things coming out of that, right? Because, wow, you don't put your money where your mouth was, right? You were there when they couldn't necessarily pay.
Yeah, absolutely. I think they are thankful for that. And plus it's also a way that we were able to give back to our community because we're talking about clients that operate within our county, right? So their beneficiaries were served, and that made me feel good.
Yeah, tell me about this local focus. I know you have a focus of serving your local community, your local county. Was that something, again, which emerged? Or was it very deliberate, focused for you? Or was it just natural? Those are the relationships you had very locally, and that's how you build the business?
Well, I mean, yeah, we do have a couple of national clients, but locally, because I think our business grew because the local chamber of commerce, the local Rotary, the local exchange club, and a couple of other professional organizations that we just show FaceTime and we contribute and we volunteer and we sit on committees and we sit on boards. So of course it makes sense that if we're known in the local county, we're going to be getting clients from the local county. I can't tell you how many times somebody will call me or email me and says, "Oh, your name's been banging around our office for 2 years now. We finally got a grant and we're ready to spend some money." So reputation precedes us in the local community, and the county is big enough. I mean, there's 3,000, 4,000 nonprofit organizations in the county. There's a lot to go around.
Yeah. Yeah. That's what a great position to be in, right? Where your name is already being used in those contexts a couple of years ahead of people coming to you.
Yes, yes, yeah, and we could use that case studies and testimonials to parlay us into some national accounts, which we've done. Although I will say some of our national accounts, they're headquartered locally, so it would be unusual for us to get a national account that's not located in the state of Illinois in this country, but it has happened.
Yeah. 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 Really interesting. So, yeah, I love that local rootedness and how it served you. It's probably that I'm thinking of Facebook, right? When they started, right? They were working with a couple of universities or whatever, right? So you get that kind of critical mass in a particular zone. And I think I've seen both businesses, right? Some people go very global from the start, which if you're serving a certain niche, perhaps that can work. But it sounds like for you, it was more almost organic, right? That because those were the areas where you were showing up in.
Well, yeah. I mean, that and the fact that once we niche down into a nonprofit world, it is like any other business, but it's also got its unique challenges. Nonprofits care about only three things, right? They care about funding, they care about donors are part of funding, they care about volunteer recruitment, and awareness. At the end of the day, it goes into one of those three buckets. And, with a niche like that and then a local focus, there's a trust built in, before they even say, we want to work with you or not. I used to love the conversation of us versus another agency. What I didn't like in the beginning before we made a name for ourselves is why you should work with an agency at all, or why we should work with, I'm not here to convince you to work with us or not. I'm here to understand what your challenge is and find out whether we have a solution for that challenge. And then I'll have the conversation of why us versus any other agency. I'd love that conversation because there are not that many agencies out there that niche into a nonprofit world. So that would be our edge.
Yeah, nice. So let me just change the gear a little bit here, Paul. One of my favorite questions is, how do you need to change if you want your business to multiply the impact, scale, help all these nonprofits that you're not currently serving? Because as a leader, we're generally the lead on our own organization, right? We're a driver and in some ways limiting it in some way. So what stretch be for you if you want to multiply your impact in this area?
Yeah, well, I think I spent most of my time last year. Great question, by the way. Spent most of my time last year removing myself and getting out of the way. I was basically the account manager for 40 clients, and that's just really impossible. And so balls were dropping. So then what I did is I spoke that out and said, okay, each of the employees that they do most of the work on for that client, they're going to also manage the account and do the project management and going to empower them to make the decisions instead of having to have everything come through me. And I also hired a general account manager to take 11 of my that I kept, and took all 11 and manages those. It's important to get out of the way. It's important to empower your employees to make those decisions and giving them processes and standard operating procedures so that they can do them well. So I spent all last year doing that, and it freed up my time to do what is now my job, which is operations and scaling. It's a big change from my graphic design days.
So that's kind of the rearview mirror. You spent that last year getting to this place where now you have this opportunity to do operations and scaling. So going forward, what's that going to be, that slightly uncomfortable growth area that will make the biggest difference?
I think for us right now, Richard, it's sales, right? So finding a resource to handle sales as opposed to, and we say this for our own clients, we get a lot of referrals, but relying on referrals is the absolute slowest way to grow a business. It's a great pat on the back and testament that you're doing a great job. But it's also the absolute slowest way you can grow your business. So in order to get beyond that and use, so now we've scaled, or we've created a structure so that we can scale. It's now more about sales and getting our name out there and building our own awareness. So that was our focus and is our focus this year.
And does that require you to do that selling, or do you need to recruit? Is that something you want to spend more of your time on, or are you looking at more building a team to do that?
Well, when you start off as a solopreneur, you have to be good at sales. And I never considered myself a salesman because it's always a conversation. And I love having those conversations. I know what we do really well, so I could talk about if we can solve a challenge. You want to get more clients, you want to get more, you want to promote an event, you want to figure out how to take in donations with Apple Pay. We could solve all those problems, and I can tell them right on the phone or in an email, like, this is how much it'll cost, this is how long it'll take, and we'll have it done. So yes, I have to be involved in it. I have to be involved probably in the training aspect of it for sure. I'm starting to record calls and sales calls so that we can build a library of like how to handle objections and all the typical things you would do in sales. But I'm not good. I am not a good salesman. I'm not a hunter, Richard. I'm not good at going after new business and nurturing that relationship until there's a sale. In the nonprofit world, that could be a year. So like anything we're doing now is going to happen. We won't see any income from that until next year, typically.
Got it. Yeah. So that sounds like you need to be prepared for that. I mean, that's hiring somebody who might not deliver results overnight. That's quite an investment, right, for you, by the sound of it.
Initially, yeah. Typically, in an agency world, you would do a draw and a base plus commission so that you can get over that initial 6-month hump. But then once that starts, it just never, now you've got a pipeline. Now you can predict, after that point.
Yeah, definitely. Perfect. So Paul, this has been an interesting conversation. I think it's interesting how you've evolved as you've grown the business in all these dimensions, right? A sense of purpose, the kind of clients that you want to work with. And then I think this last phase of really spending a year on extracting yourself. It's I want to give credit to you for this, because so many people get stuck in that incremental phase, right? Where they're just doing all the things in the business. And it doesn't matter whether it's a small business or a large business, it can be the same, right? There's people in multinationals who are, I like to say almost everybody is operating one level down from where they should be.
Oh, wow. Yeah. Well, you always hear, right? You're working in the business instead of on the business. That's kind of a mantra that's been around, for a long time. And I've heard it, and it's one thing to understand it and another thing to actually do it. And I think you need a lot of consulting and help on the outside. I think one of the best things I did was I did hire a business and leadership coach a few years back. And then after that, I joined a professional association for marketing agencies. And just to be able to talk to other people who are doing the same thing and how they've solved problems. If there's a professional association for a job that you're in that you're ready to scale, join it, because you can get instant answers. I wished when I started this company that I had a book that somebody just told me, this is what you need to do. It doesn't exist. And the shortcut, and this was paramount for me. If you want the shortcut on how to scale and how to grow, join a professional association. Start with the Chamber of Commerce. But better than that, join a professional association that's in your line of work, because you're going to meet people that have been doing it for far longer. I've had actually agency owners who have been doing it for half the time that I've been doing it, but figured stuff out before I did. Figured things out on the funding side, or figured things out on, like, how much do you pay a salesperson? And you can get 17 answers from 17 different agencies in 5 different states, within 24 hours, just to get a baseline to see if you're matched up with where your head's at.
Yeah. Well, absolutely. I couldn't agree more. I mean, I think those two things you mentioned, getting outside support, obviously, I would say that's what I do, right? But I see the power of pushing people thinking, because when your thinking changes, all these new possibilities open up that you couldn't even see before. And then that power of community. I'm in a community of high-level consultants and coaches. It's changed the way I think about my own business. And also I run a community. I run a CEO program for leaders who are already super successful, and they're ready to change the world, create their legacy. 100x legacy involves them doing the strategic thinking, but also doing the deep inner work, because again, for them, that's a new game, right? They know how to be successful in business. Do they know how to create change beyond that? Not necessarily. And so that again is that kind of melting pot that you mentioned, where people spark off each other, and in the process change really quite fast. So I love that.
Yeah, and at the very least, what's wrong with a little extra outside perspective, right?
Yeah, definitely. Well, hey, Paul, it's been great talking with you. If people want to get in touch with you or Paul Gregory Media, your business, how do they do that?
Very easy. Just visit paulgregorymedia.com. From there, you got my contact info, our location, and everything we do.
That's simple enough. I look forward to following along on the journey, and as you scale and help others, help even more people in the world. So thank you for what you do.
Yeah, we're looking forward to continuing what we're doing. Thank you for having me on the show, and giving the listeners a little insight into what we do.
Thanks, Paul.
Thank you.
Well, that's a wrap. If you received value from this conversation, please do leave us a review on your favorite podcast platform. We'd deeply appreciate it. And if you'd like to check out the show notes from this episode, head to xquadrant.com/podcast, where you'll find all the details. Now, finally, when you're in top leadership, who supports and challenges you at a deep level to help you multiply your impact? Discover more about the different ways we can support you at xquadrant.com.